This is the DRF Players Podcast.
Hello and welcome to show number 222 of the DRF Players Podcast, the March 21st, 2017 edition. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, back with you, joined by the usual crew. Took a few clicks of the button to get that theme song going today, but he eventually made it happen. He's sitting in the DRF offices in New York. He is Mike Hogan. What's going on, Mike?
What's with the little light shade there this early in the morning? What?
I'm not blaming you. I mean, hey, sometimes you click a button and nothing happens. I was just worried I was going to have to start talking, or that it was playing and I wasn't hearing it again, like happened a few shows ago. So I'm just glad it worked out. What's going on? How are you doing it?
Doing all right. Weather's warming up. We're now officially in spring, and that's all good.
Yeah, the snow outside my window begs to differ about this whole first day of spring thing. I'm reserving judgment, but there is a place in these here United States where it's always sunny, and that's Austin, Texas, where we find our other member of the usual crew at UT Big here himself, Jonathon Kinchen. JK, how are you?
I didn't want to let Mike feel alone, so I thought I would add to the clicking woes. It's good. It's good. It's beautiful here. A little bit trafficy now that the University of Texas is back in order. We have South by, I think it's strategically placed during spring break when all of the UT students are gone. So there's really no break. It's like South by's here when they're gone, and then they come back, and the roads are crazy. So
that's wrapped already. South by's. I don't know how it works. It's like a 1 week festival.
It's like a Friday. It's like a I don't know what they call this, but like a full week, like a 2 weekends and a week in between, whatever they call it. I'm sure there's a name for that.
Gotcha. Somewhat less than a fortnight, but more than a week. It is confusing. Did you get to any more shows besides your bro, or were you too busy handicapping various pick fives and playing in contests to get out there too much?
Too many contests. Yeah, it's crazy. It's fun to get out a couple nights, but it's just they take over the city, and so I'm not mad about it, but I just choose to not go into it.
No, I hear you. I want to, of course, talk about the big weekend and contest you had. It was were you partying like it was 2015 after getting entries to both the Win contest and the Del Mar handicapping challenge in the same day? Over a $10,000 haul for you on DRF tournaments this weekend. Not too shabby.
Yeah, I joked I forgot how to get to the winner's circle, so I needed some assistance on getting down there, and it was fun. I was glad to kind of have some success again, especially for some events that were on the calendar anyways, and like we joke all the time I don't even know where the Chase is in San Diego, so I don't have to go there towards the end of July, so that's always a positive thing.
I noticed, I thought it was very interesting but you obviously have a lot of interesting ideas about playing multiple tickets, when to do it, when not to do it. In both instances on Sunday, I noticed that your qualifying ticket was your second ticket. How did that work out? That's the first question.
Well, the two tournaments I was in, it's obviously the scores were different. First, the Win contest was all in, so there's no switching, there's no changing, there's no adjusting, there's no zigging and zagging. It's you put them in, and that's what you got. So that's why that score ended up the way it did. It so happened to be that was a higher score than I got in the Del Mar one. The reason being is that my second opinions of the day were obviously the better ones that happened to hit more and were better prices, so that ticket was higher. I couldn't really adjust. The tricky thing about what happened in the Del Mar tournament was and I just kind of looked at it trying to figure it out. In the first 9 races, I had the winners of 8. I had 8 winners out of the first 9 races. But they were on different.
Between
they were kind
the
of
two
going
entries,
back, So it's just like, I would my first entry started off good, and then my B horses started winning, and then I switched it back, and then that had, so it just, but at a certain point, I was kind of 1-2 the entire time throughout the tournament, which was great, because once we got to the last 4 races, I got to spread and protect, and kind of protect myself against what other people were going to be playing. At one point, with 3 races to go, the three people behind me had the same horse that I had picked. And then the last race, 4 people behind me had the same horse that I picked. And then, a guy way behind me had so it just worked out really well when you can have some success earlier and kind of be in a position where you have 2 entries that are in contention. And so it just so happened to be that it was my second entry, but, my first entry started off right. My first entry started off in the first 3 races with a $17 score and a $10 score. And then I switched. And then on my second entry, I had a $13 winner, and then it just kind of went back and forth.
In the all-in format, when you're playing 2 entries, I'm just going to guess that what you do is you play the same horse on your strongest opinions, and then you split in races where you have a divergent opinion. Is that right?
Yeah, there's times where there is times where when you're playing 2 entries in an all-in format where you look at your ticket after you're done putting in your entries and you don't have the same horse on any of the 2. And when I get into those situations, it makes me very uneasy because essentially I'm telling myself that I don't have any strong opinions, and I'm just hoping that my good horses come on the right sides. And what I prefer to try to do, and I've kind of evolved into trying to do, is I want to have more of the same so that when I am right, then my splits are actually an advantage rather than a hope. So I can play the 3 on both, the 5 on both, the 6 on both. Then I'm going to play the 10 and the 14 so that I actually am having some type of an advantage rather than just kind of hoping that it lands on my lands kind of in my good entry, whichever one that happens to be. So
I'd be
it's a little bit
super
trickier.
uncomfortable. Definitely, I'd be super uncomfortable if I had 2 completely different sets of horses, because you kind of have to win a whole bunch of coin flips there against your own opinion, which just doesn't feel right. So let's take the win, for example. You may have to look this up, but how many of your 2 entries? You had 2 entries in the win contest, obviously. How many were the same, and how many spots did you differ?
There's 12 races. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that were the same.
Okay, fully half. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So I guess there is some luck involved. I'm guessing on that B ticket, you must have had a couple that came in and got aligned there.
Yeah, the second entry I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 winners.
And how many were and of the winners, how many were the same?
Of the winners, how many were same was 1, 2.
Sorry, I should have
3,
prepped you for that question.
4 of them were the same. 4 of them were the same. And then a place horse. I got $4 on a place horse that was the same. So 5 of my 7 that were the same, I picked up points on.
Hey, Mike, do you have any questions for Jonathon about his big weekend on DRFT or any of the tournament stuff he's been involved in lately?
The only question is, what took you so long, Jonathon? Were you just saving it up for one weekend?
No, what's funny is I've been wasting an hour of my Fridays, and I think it's been interfering with my performance.
Ouch.
No,
man, that hurts, JK. That hurts.
No, I'm kidding. No, it comes in waves. You talked about it before, and a lot of the pieces that you write. It just seems like you see a lot of the same names in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It just comes in waves, And I had a great week last week altogether. The reason I played so many Del Mar entries is because I qualified to win during the week, playing for $44. So I turned 44 into 400, 44 into 400, and then when I started to play on Sunday, I said, "There's 25 people in this tournament. It's a live tournament. I've pretty much got a free roll. I mean, to a certain extent, I've got 2 entries for free. I'm just going to buy that third one to try to catch any kind of crazy bombs that I don't normally have." And my third entry scored $10 because I was just playing just long shot after long shot after long shot, just in case something crazy happened. I was at least still kind of back in the game for contention.
Do you like that strategy going forward, or is that something based on, it would seem to be overreacting based on one weekend of that strategy not helping you to abandon it. Do you think that's an idea other players should think about getting an extra entry, whether it's a second or a third, for that sort of bomb protection? Obviously, no real bombs came in on Sunday, but do you think there's a validity to that approach?
Well, there actually was a bomb, and you wrote about it in your piece. Maybe just the 11 horse that Eric Wing actually happened to have. The valedictorian was pretty long.
Yeah, there was a $50 horse. Yeah, you're right.
But in a 25-man tournament, that's kind of why I loved the idea. In a 25-man tournament, one person had him. That person had $4. They couldn't catch me. And so, yeah, no, I love it to a certain extent. It's hard to do with all in. I wouldn't recommend it so much in an all in format because it just ends up being like this weird kind of lottery ticket. You never really know what to do with your third one.
Right.
But in a live format, you can definitely kind of protect yourself against, we all look, there's always a 20-1 shot that catches our eye where you're like, And if you can always kind of put yourself in a position where if that happens to come in, you can do it. I don't think it's a great financial proposition to buy 3 entries to every tournament. But in a situation where you feel like you've qualified one, go ahead and buy that second one, in my opinion, because you're really getting a significant edge in that way. And just play your main one like you normally would. Focus in and play your if you're a 1 entry guy, then just play your 1 entry like you would normally play your 1 entry, and then treat the second one just like bomb protection. Or if you're a 2 entry guy, then play that third one with bomb protection. And
then when the bomb comes in for you, do you switch and that becomes your good ticket? Do you believe in that piece of the good ticket, bad ticket theory as espoused by Paul Sherman and many others in the Winning Contest Player?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, I think this is probably obvious, but it only becomes your good ticket if it actually becomes the one that's the highest ranked.
Sure.
If you've got one that's $84 and you hit a cap horse on your other one, that one's still your second ticket. But, I love the idea. It's just, and it doesn't always work out. It has at times. I mean, it's happened to all of us, I'm sure, where you're in a weird position. You pick a bomb because he's 25-1 and you're way behind and the horse hits. Next thing you know, you're back in the game. And I've won a tournament like that before. Just, I picked a horse. I seriously looked up and down. I was like, I don't know. Who's 20-1? This guy's 20-1. I'll pick him, and he wins. In fact, the horse ran last week. His name was Snow Cloud, and he won a turf sprint at Del Mar last summer. I had no interest in the horse, but he got me back in the game. I actually played my A opinion later and ended up getting, I don't remember what it was, but a seat or something. So, yeah, no, I think if you can afford to do it and it makes sense financially, it's definitely something to consider.
Before we move on from contests, we've got these triple play feeders. They'll be starting up again tomorrow. I assume now that your summer contest plans are sort of sorted out, you'll be looking to focus on these opportunities to win seats to 3 major contests at once. It's going to be Keeneland on April 23rd, the Santa Anita Preakness Tournament. I believe that's the 20th and 21st, whatever the 2 days of is it the 2 days of Preakness weekend, or is it Friday, Saturday?
It's just 1 day, I think. The tournament itself.
Oh, it's just Saturday.
Yeah, I think Nate's decided to kind of just make it easier on people and just do the 1 day tournament. That
works for me. We'll confirm that. We have time till the Preakness, and then the June 3rd this year, Monmouth Pick Your Prize event. Will we be seeing? Are you going to try to parlay your success in those suckers?
I'll be playing every $25 feeder from now until then. My goal is to have 3 $1,000 entries in the finals and try to duplicate what happened on Sunday. So
give a quick overview of the 3 ways folks can qualify for that one.
Okay, so the first way is there's going to be $25 feeders that will feed into the round 1s that will feed into the $110 round 2s. There's a $110 round 2 on Saturday where the top 10% of that will go into the $1,000 finals. You can buy into at any level, but I would recommend the $25 situation at top 20%. So if there's 10 people playing, you just got to be in the top 2. And you would move that to $110 the following. That goes into a 10% tournament. If you can get the top 10% of that, it'll take you to the $1,000 final. So, look, those three events are amazing. We've talked about the Grade 1 gamble and how awesome that is. Keeneland in the spring is something special. I don't think I really need to explain that. The Santa Anita Preakness thing is so much fun. It's always been, we've been there the last 2 years, and just kind of having that Preakness party at the racetrack, at a beautiful racetrack with beautiful weather, hanging out in the Eddie Logan. I watched American Pharoah win the Preakness in the Eddie Logan. It was really, really fun. And then, the Pick Your Prize was new last year, but that was pretty exciting too at the end of the day. When the tournament was over, and Then there's another tournament inside of the tournament when guys are deciding what seat they're going to take. Are they going to take an NHC seat? Are they going to take a BC seat? Are they going to take the $10,000 cash? And that was a really cool event too. And Brian Skirka and the guys at Monmouth do a great job. So we packaged up 3 good ones and 3 that I hope that I can participate in.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's talk about racing from the weekend. We'll start with the Rebel Stakes and Malagacy, surprising some observers, including myself, with his ability to get the distance and do the business. The speed figure did not come back super high. 91 on the Beyer scale, 113 on Timeform US. Mike Hogan, what did you think about the Rebel?
I don't think that's going to have our Derby winner. Blanket finish for second. I didn't really see anybody in there that I was looking to bet going forward. I think though Malagacy certainly was the best, at least at that distance, I don't think he's going to stretch out. I don't think 10 furlongs of the Derby is going to do him any favors. He didn't seem like a horse who wanted to go any further than that. Look, he's lightly raced and he's improving, and that was his first time going long. So maybe there's some upside, but he's going to have to improve quite a bit to be a player as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the form doesn't look so good when you have a 150-1 shot, even one that Mike Hogan did say nice things about in the closer, the deeper, closer look as part of the Derby package. Super look, that's the term I was looking for. But I mean, when you see that, JK, does that make you question the form of the race as a whole?
I wasn't feeling that race very much. There's probably 3 other Pletchers I would rather bet come the first Saturday in May. Good for Malagacy, good for the connections, but it didn't really do anything to get my blood pumping and look forward to the next start. I think the Arkansas Derby now it looked like it was going to be the toughest one, and now it feels like it could be one of the most open ones. So we'll see what happens moving forward.
Before we leave the race, let's talk about American Anthem. I was a little skeptical on form going in. If you listen to folks who listen to Friday's show, that's I think you reading between the lines might have got that impression. There's no doubt the horse had a little bit of a trip in there, but for me, I'm still a little hesitant to just excuse this race and move on and give him another chance. Am I being too harsh, Jonathan?
No, he was bad. Really bad. He did have a trip, but that's the kind of trip with a horse like that, he's supposed to run 4th, you know what I mean? And he didn't. And that was less than impressive. And, interested to see what Bob had to say moving forward. I wish Bob, I'm hoping, I didn't listen yet, but I'm assuming Bob was on Bick after his Valdori win. So maybe there is a little bit of a story behind what happened, and I'll have to try to catch that later today. But it was very uninspiring for a horse that I kept on wanting to say was kind of my lean, at least towards where I was going to be going in the right direction for Derby. But that was definitely not one.
JK, you might have to leave the powdered silver wig on the shelf this year. I don't know. Mike Hogan, what did you think about the race for American Anthem? Can you we talked about the trip. It was sort of a slow and sluggish start and a wide early run, and then not really even asked, not really even pushed beyond the turn, I would say.
Right.
Right. Is that enough? I'll be honest. If it was just a race, that's the kind of race I would consider just like making a complete toss. But because it's Baffert, and we expect so much of his horses at this time of year, it gives me a lot of pause. What's your take on it?
I get your point. But it was so bad as to almost not be believed, because we've seen a horse who has shown some talent, both sprinting and then going long against though he didn't flatter him last out, against a horse who's proven to be pretty decent in Gormley. The other thing I'll note, aside from, you mentioned the trip, there was a little bit of a middle move on the backstretch. None of it mattered. You're absolutely right, because those are the kinds of things. He's better than Sonneteer. He's better than probably Untrapped and Petrov as well. So when he runs such a clunker like that, it makes you wonder. The only thing I saw, and I'm trying to find the story right now, I think it might have been our Mary Rampolini. Elliot Walden of WinStar reported that at some point in the race, they don't know when, but at some point in the race, he lost his front left shoe. So he was running at least a portion, if not most of the race, without a shoe. Whether or not that's enough to excuse the effort, I don't know. But maybe it's enough to just sort of draw a line through it, even though it's Baffert and Oaklawn. Maybe for whatever reason, this particular horse didn't like this particular trip. And the shoe and the trip and the ice, all that other stuff was just the icing on the cake. I don't know. But he's better than what we saw. That's for sure.
We'll take a look. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I wouldn't put Gormley in the positive camp of cases you want to make for him going forward based on that race the previous week personally. But I mean, I take your point. I mean, he has a horse who has some accomplishments. Let's talk about some other races from Oaklawn over the weekend. We saw More Spirit oblige as the 1-2 favorite, earning a 105 buyer speed figure. How big of a player is More Spirit going to be in this division going forward, Mike Hogan?
Well, especially since a lot of them seem to be over in Dubai. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, as well as on Friday. We're hoping to have Marcus Hirsch, who's in Dubai right now, join us to go more in depth into that card. Because a lot of those players are over there, I think it opens up the door for More Spirit, at least until the early summer when you start seeing some of those Dubai runners come back. I don't see why he's not one of the top ones, especially of those that didn't go over there. He's right up there with Shaman Ghost and many of the others, and maybe he'll prove to even be a little bit better, because I know he was thought quite highly of last year. He kind of didn't really run that well in the Derby, and then they put him on the sidelines for a little while. So it's nice to see him back as a 4-year-old and running quality races again.
What did you think, JK? You like the horse going in? Do you like him as much coming out?
Yeah, like him going in, like him coming out. I think he's gonna snag up all of those.
Is that some expression I don't know?
I like it.
Up? Yeah,
I like it.
What the kids are saying these days?
Yeah. You don't listen to hip hop. I'm just kidding. That's not really. You just blame. You can say any word you want and just say it's like new in hip hop, and it works. No, I just think that he's going to win all these grade 2s and grade 3s. I think they'll probably bring him back for the Ali Sheba, and I think he's a likely winner of that race. I mean, there's some other horses that'll probably show up and be interesting, and I think we might even talk about that whole idea of the Ali Sheba sooner than later. He's he's the type of horse that can win the Pimlico Special, going a mile and 3/16 at the Preakness, or things like that. I don't see him winning, the Jockey Club Gold Cup or the Whitney, but I think he's going to win things along the line of that grade 2, grade 3 level.
Minor majors.
Yeah.
Let's actually segue. We have more races to talk about, but this is a question that came in that I didn't even fully understand when it came in. I thought somebody was asking a question 6 weeks in advance about the pick 4s and pick 6s on Oaks Day and Derby Day, but a more careful reading of the question suggests that this listener was interested in the idea of our going into a bit more depth on the undercard races for the Derby and Oaks Day, the same way that we talk about the Derby and the Oaks. Obviously, that's it's quite a challenge. Mike Hogan, I'll let you explain why.
Well, it's a little premature for a number of reasons. I mean, we hear which horses are pointing to which races on the undercard, but they won't actually take nominations for weeks, and of course we won't get final entries until a few days out. The difference for the Oaks and the Derby, of course, is that there are all these points races and you need to qualify. So there's a leaderboard. You know who's likely to target and likely off the trail because you hear so much about it. You don't necessarily know that for the La Troyenne or the Woodford Turf or the American Turf or any of those other races. That said, there was a horse, one of the Conquest horses, Conquest Fahrenheit, ran a really good race in the Pasadena. They're talking American Turf for him on the Derby undercard. You can start making lists, if you're so inclined, for those kinds of horses that are targeting the first Saturday in May, albeit for a different race.
there is something to be said for this idea that in today's racing, you can get so much of the best racing only by focusing on pretty much Saturdays, pretty much not even Sundays, but just Saturdays. And with that in mind, if you want to be sort of a weekend / stakes specialist, I haven't heard of any players actually doing this, but I don't think it's a bad idea now that I'm thinking about it for a second. And whether you want to use a tool like DRF's Watchmaker Watch to have a sense of who the top horses are in each division, or create your own spreadsheet and really get to know these divisions the way that many of us get to know horses on our own individual circuit, there's something to be said for it. Maybe even more so than when I first proposed that we talk about this question today. And Jonathon, I know you're enough of a horse racing fanboy that you can probably think off the top of your head of which races we're talking about that are going to be on the Oaks and Derby undercard, and have some maybe not tips this far out, but let's just call them horses that you're interested in who you think might show up in some of these bigger races on the undercard of Oaks and Derby. You already sort of tipped your hand about More Spirit maybe being one of them. Who else comes to mind for you?
Well, it's funny. It's I think the Divisadero thing obviously was one that I found.
Can we go one show without mentioning Divisadero?
No,
I'm kidding. He's the perfect horse to mention for this, and I'll let you explain why.
Yeah, the point is that from a handicapping perspective, I'm not interested in this conversation. From a handicapping wagering perspective, I'm not interested in it because I don't have that horse this year. Sometimes those horses just kind of fall to you. You dig them up, you find them, you fall in love, you hope they show up on a big day with big pools, on Derby day with excitement and blah, 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 blah. But the reason I'm willing to have conversation is because I'm a super fan. Like, I love the sport, and I get excited to think about those races. The Pat Day Mile with the Derby prospects cutting back, or the sprinters stretching out. The turf, the American turf, where there's a horse that didn't get into the Derby, but now is trying turf for the first time. The Woodford Reserves, like the first kind of big turf race of the year, where you get horses like, I don't know, Flincher, obviously he's retired, but like, the new kind of who's here, who's going to be good in this division. It's right before the Derby. It's exciting. The Humana Distaff, the Churchill Downs Sprint. There's all of these races, the Turf Sprint. There's all these races that are so exciting on that day that I get excited about who's going to be running there from a fan's perspective. The only time I'm interested in having that conversation from a wagering point of view is if I actually have a horse that's on my watch list that I can't wait, and I just don't have that horse yet. So I can't, from a handicapping perspective, I'm not interested in trying to speculate who's going to be there, who's my A going to be and my B going to be in the Woodford Reserve. Like, I don't know who's there. I don't know who's going. It doesn't matter.
Those conversations will happen. They'll just happen the week of. And I do love that idea. I don't know, Mike, we have so much coverage that week, but it might be fun to try to get a ticket maker webinar in there. How about some specifics, though? When we were talking pre-show, Jonathon, I thought you did have a few horses you'd sort of circled in your mind that we might see. Am I remembering that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited for what seems to be a rider change on Divisadero, and that's not like I said, not to bash Edgar, but just to kind of try something different with the horse and to get a new pair of hands on him and see what happens in that situation. So that'll be exciting. The Pat Day Mile is always one that's exciting for me. I'm hoping at this point, kind of a long distance goal is that Uncontested does not make the Derby and is then cut back in that race, which I think he would be extremely dangerous in. And I think that's kind of all that's got me really going. Oh, the female turf race would be a possible spot that we can maybe see, like a Lady Eli or Tepin if she ever gets back to work. There's so nothing extremely exciting there, but definitely some opportunities to see some good horses show back up.
All right, let's segue back into talking about some specific races. Mike, you had nominated the Santa Margarita as a race to talk about, with Vale Dory getting the job done and scoring a 100 Beyer speed figure. I take it you were impressed?
Well, I think it was just an interesting race. We talked about it a little bit on Friday, and it ended up being what we thought it might be, which was essentially a match race between Finest City and Val Dory. I was a little surprised. I mean, maybe it was the post position draw and Valdori being to the inside. I was a little surprised to see Valdori going to the lead and essentially just taking them wire to wire. Fina City sat off the whole way and seemingly had every chance, but just could never make it by. And Valdori, we doubted the quality of what she had beaten. We doubted the easy trips, but she showed me that she's at least one of the top older fillies in the country going long, that's not named Songbird or Stellar Wind. And with those two seemingly taking a little bit of break right now, Valdori's taking advantage of it.
What did you think, JK?
I kind of wanted Fina City to win just because I picked her, but also because we used this race as a decider of where we were going to go to dinner. One restaurant was even, one restaurant was odd, and I really wanted to go to the odd one. So when Valdori won, it was kind of a bummer.
Can you go 5 minutes without betting on something? That's the question.
That really happened. No, I mean, she's good. She proved me wrong. I thought Fina City was going to get her here. It was kind of a hot sports opinion that she was going to stretch out and be better than a horse that I didn't feel had been tested. But Valdori proved it right again. And like Mike and Baffert have both said since she started kind of really picking up some of these big races, that she's only getting better and she's only figuring things out. And so she's definitely one that with this tactical situation where she'll go to the front, shut off and finish, she's one that's going to have to be reckoned with moving forward. I'm still not signing on that she's some Beholder Songbird-esque filly, but she definitely is a good racehorse.
Is this a situation that, like we've talked about in the past on the show, Jonathan, where a horse sort of runs through your opinion? I mean, you were describing it, if I'm remembering correctly, from Friday, almost as you thought it was a one-horse race, with Fina City being by far the more likely winner. But you've talked in the past about when a horse runs through your opinion, proves you wrong, you're a little more likely to give them extra credit the next time around. Is that where you are with Valdori, or are you going to keep your skeptic hat on for a little bit longer?
No, for sure. And part of my bullishness on that opinion was I thought the price differential would be a little bit larger, 6-5 to 8-5. I just thought it was going to be more significant. I thought Fina City would be closer to 3 and Valdori would be shorter, just because of the two-turn situation. Obviously, Fina City's a Eclipse Award winner, but that's one of my weaknesses is the tote board and predicting what's going to happen there, and that kind of was a display there. So. No, I mean, I thought she had a better shot than what the odds, initially were going to be. But at 6-5 and 8-5, it seems like there was a little bit of value there on Valdori.
Let's talk about the Azeri for a second. It was won by 12-1 Streamline. Meanwhile, the favorite at 30 cents on the dollar, your pick 5 single there, JK, struggling home. What happened?
A rad happened?
Here comes the jockey knocking.
No, I think if anyone has time, and I'm sure most people that listen to this show follow Andy Serling, I don't want to steal what he said. He had a long, 8-tweet thing yesterday, and one of the things he said, which is an answer that I will give to the novice fan who asks us all this question: how important is a jockey? And what he said yesterday, I think, was right. It says the best riders lose the fewest races with horses that are supposed to win. And that's to me, that's the best way of describing it. That horse, without a doubt, was the best horse. And in my opinion, the decisions that were made with the ride are why the horse got beat. Or at least you can argue that was why the horse got beat. And he used the example of Mike Smith on More Spirit. Just go on with it. With Songbird, just go on with it. And don't get those horses in situations where they can't use their best assets. And Terra Promessa's asset was she loved the track and she was quick enough to be forwardly placed to not get herself in trouble and not have issues. Arad's a great rider. I'm not knocking him. It just wasn't one of his best performances. But like I said, this morning wasn't one of my best performances. I got up a little bit late. I was running, so I'm not knocking him. I think that the ride had a lot to do with what happened.
The horses who were 2-3 at the half ended up 1-2. It was a bit of a what do you want to? The word strangle comes to mind. Is that fair, Mike Hogan?
Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing where when you have a horse that has some speed and you're on the rail, you want to get position. And often getting position means letting the horse go, not pulling back so that you get them in tight on the first turn and in tight when you're trying to rally, which is even though it was a small field, that's exactly what happened with Terra Promessa. And look, I rarely knock jockeys, but I'm sure that's one that he wishes he had back.
You also don't know what the instructions were. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but before I went too crazy, castigating him, we don't know exactly what happened. But I will say this: we've seen him give that ride. He is not. Let's just say this: he's not aggressive about getting his position going forward. As talented of a rider as he is, there's a lot of tremendous assets as a rider. But that is there are other riders I would probably prefer to see on a horse. I wanted to key as the single in my pick 5 on a horse that I thought would benefit from an aggressive ride. I'll just leave it at that.
I'll say this, going back to what Jonathon said about Serling's series of tweets. One of the points he made about Mike Smith was not just Songbird and some of his Arrogant and horses like that, but that the ability to adjust to the style of the horse is key for a rider. And when we think about the style of a jockey, I'll put words into his mouth. He wasn't saying this, but I will say this. I don't really want to think about the style of a jockey so much as have a really good jockey be able to adapt to the style of the horse. Mike Smith is the same jockey on Songbird as he is on Zenyatta. He's the same jockey on Arrogant as he is on another horse who's going to come from off the pace. That is, to me, the hallmark of a really good jockey. It's taking cues from your horse, regardless. I mean, sure, you want to listen to the trainer. You want to do what you're being asked in terms of the goals for that horse. But once you're on there and you're in the heat of the battle, you take what's given to you.
I agree that that's ideal, but I don't think it resembles the real world that I live in. I think that knowing jockey, and I know other people, very smart people, Mike Beer leaps to mind, barely knows who's riding the horses that he's betting. For me, that extra piece of information you can get by having a sense of what your rider's tendencies are is essential to me having a full understanding. When I'm fully in tune at the track, that's something I'm seeing. I'm able to better design races in my head based on who the rider is. How important is that to the work that you do, Jonathon?
Yeah, I mean, it's something you have to take into consideration. Like we talked about last week when someone asked, kind of how you identify who's going to be on the lead. Like I said, post position, who's riding. No, it's important. I mean, if you think that you are going to single a horse that's going to be loose on the lead and Irad or Julian or someone's riding, good luck. That's just not what they do, and not always. Don't get me wrong. I think Julian's one of the best riders on the front end when he gets there. But it's you got to understand what you're up against and what's likely to happen. Jose is aggressive, Jose Ortiz, and when you need him to go to the front, he typically finds his way there. The same can be said for someone like Paco Lopez or Tyler Bays or things like that. When there's a sense of expectation from what you're going to get from your rider based on their previous rides and their tendencies. So I think it's definitely something to keep in mind and consider, especially on the circuit that you find yourself playing the most.
And even with someone like Mike Smith, I agree with what Mike Hogan said about his ability to adapt to the running style of a horse. But I'm, a lot more interested in him when the money's on the line than I am on a Thursday in an allowance race. I just feel like you get, you think this is true of every rider, but with Mike, I feel like it's extreme that you just get by far his most plugged in and best work when it's like a really big race as opposed to something, that's more of an everyday situation. Mike Hogan, you think that's a fair comment?
Yeah, I mean, and I think some of that is borne out by the fact that he rarely rides these days on races other than on the weekend. I mean, you compare him. We talked about Jose Ortiz. You compare the number of mounts that Mike had last year compared to Jose. Jose's riding out to Parks on a Tuesday. Mike isn't even riding any races on a Thursday or Friday at Santa Anita oftentimes. I think he had 1/5 the number of mounts as many of the other jockeys. And some of that speaks to the ability and where he's put himself in his career. He's at the point where he can pick and choose and can decide he only wants to ride certain horses on certain days.
Yeah, there's definitely a cycle that that takes place there, and those two guys are in very different places in the cycle. Jose Ortiz and Mike Smith, that's for sure. But both excellent. Jose's an excellent money rider as well, in my opinion. Let's talk a little bit more Triple Crown stuff. What is the latest with our friend Classic Empire? It seems like I'm hearing stories about him still not really being excited about going about his training, going about his business. Jonathan, what are you hearing about? What's the latest on Classic Empire?
I just heard what everyone else heard from the forum, is that he didn't work this weekend. But then I heard that maybe he galloped recently. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe I was wrong. But that's what I've heard. It seems like it's an uphill battle with the horse. It's a shame because the horse would be the favorite for the Derby if he would act accordingly. But at this point, I mean, nothing but respect for the operation and all that. But I mean, I just can't see it. Can you? No. I mean, as a wagering person, I can't see it. But I'm hoping for it. I mean, I think. Obviously, I want what's best for Norman the Cassies, but I also want what's best for the sport, and to have him participating is better for everyone. But I just it's an uphill battle. It feels like at this point, with just the lack of foundation that he's had, and the first race back wasn't something that kind of got everyone thinking that's our Derby favorite either. So it just seems like he's got an uphill battle, and I'll hope he shows up in the Bluegrass and has an opportunity to prove us wrong and move forward. But like I said, I'm skeptical, and as I think everyone is. I mean, you could probably ask
at this point, how could you not be, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Cassies are probably having their fingers crossed, hoping that everything falls in line in order to get this thing done. So, they'd be doing what I would be doing, what Todd would be doing, what Baffert would be doing. They're doing what everyone would be doing. They got a difficult horse who's had some issues. He had the hoof thing, and then he had the situation. And then he's got a little bit of an attitude problem. So it's an uphill battle. I think they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, in my experience, when you see good horses doing what this horse has behaved as extensively as this horse has done it, it's not an accident. Let's just put it that way. What do you think, Mike Hogan? Do you give this horse any count going forward?
No, at least not in the next race. He'll have to prove it to me at whatever price he's likely to be in the Bluegrass. I guess we've got a couple weeks before that race goes, but he's got a lot of catching up to do before, off that one effort, which was seemingly a non-effort in the Holy Bull. Now these issues with the working, twice refusing to work, which is, look, some people have talked about great horses that are quirky as far as working goes, and maybe that's the case here, but more often than not, it's an indication of a horse that's trying to tell you something. And maybe the answer is you slow down, you take him off the trail, you get him right, and you aim for a nice campaign starting in the summer.
Well, we'll see what happens with that. Be an incredible training job if they can get this guy back to Grade 1 winner's circle at any point. Based on some of the work they've done in the past, it would not be a total surprise if it were to happen somewhere along those lines, somewhere along the line, as Mike Hogan's saying. But in Kentucky Derby terms, be pretty unlikely at this point. Let's talk about Epicharis, a horse on the Derby Trail, who we've talked about a whole bunch on this show so far. I believe he's going to be running this weekend in the UAE Derby. Is that your understanding, Mike?
That is correct. He's won. It's a full field too, and I think we haven't had a full field over there in the UAE Derby for at least a little while. I can't remember how many Mubtaij and Lonnie beat, but I don't think it was very many. So it's interesting that this horse, who already has a spot in the Derby if he wants it, if his connections want it, has chosen the path of Lonnie, and he doesn't seem to be scaring many away. It should be a good race. And I think we've even got some Americans over there. Ken McPeak has a horse. I think Pletcher's even sending a horse over too, at least from the list that I saw.
We've talked about this idea before that maybe because of the unusual nature of this year, we'll see a contender come from an unlikely place. Do you think there's a shot, Jonathon, whether it's Epicharis or somebody else, that a particularly Boku performance in the UAE race might stamp a horse as a true contender for you when it comes to the first Saturday in May?
No, like we talked about before, the same thing with the Epicharis deal. It's an uphill battle, and I have no problem using a horse from Dubai as a kind of a pace. I'm sorry, not a pace, but a price infused angle, and he's working well. And like I said, Mike Welsh and the team are suggesting that the horse is really well meant and looking good and all that good stuff. I'll throw him in underneath of tries and supers, but I'm going to stick to the American side of the pond when it comes to my Derby winner. I'm going to watch the race. I'm going to be excited to see it. Like I said, like you joked earlier, if they're running in a circle, I'll watch it. But I don't have my eye on anything or have heard anything that makes me excited. I'm going to have to just kind of get my enthusiasm as I go if something kind of cool happens.
Makes sense. There's a rumor going around, Mike, maybe you can confirm or deny, that we may have Marcus Hirsch from Dubai as a guest on Friday's show. Is that correct?
That's the plan. If it all works out and we're able to connect to Marcus, I know Skype is blocked in the United Arab Emirates, but somehow we'll try and get him on, even if we have to do it through some tin cans and some string.
That's interesting. No Skype. I didn't realize that. That's going to be tricky. But if we can, if there's maybe a ground line we can call or something, I wonder if there's a way we can pull it off. It'd be great to have him on. You're going to want to follow all of his reporting on DRF.com. What other news, Mike Hogan, are you hearing coming out of Dubai?
Well, a number of people have asked me either individually through Twitter or through the DRF formulator when the PPs will be up. DRF will have classic and formulator PPs available. They will be up the same time they're normally up for any regular card, within a couple hours of the draw. The post position draws on Wednesday. They've already drawn post positions for some of the lesser races, the mile. I believe the non-grade 1 races already have post positions drawn, which I think is what has confused some people, which is why they're wondering when the PPs will be available. They don't draw for the big one or the UAE Derby or the turf races until Wednesday. They'll be up then, and it should be a fun, really interesting day of racing. I know DRF Bets has a $20 guaranteed wager, $20 refund if your horse runs second to Arrogate. So that's kind of fun if you can make a case for Gun Runner or one of the others. I heard Mubtaij is co-second choice with Gun Runner in the World Cup, which may or may not play out that way. I would imagine Gun Runner will take more in the betting, but should be a fun day.
How much do you pay attention to the Dubai cards, JK? And assuming that you do pay attention, obviously you'll be reading Marcus's coverage. What are some of your other sources of information? How do you approach these races with these horses coming from everywhere?
I don't know how involved Pat Cummings is at the moment with what he's tweeting, or if he's doing any write-ups anywhere. But Pat usually has a really strong opinion. He follows the Dubai racing pretty heavily, so I'll stalk his Twitter pretty heavily there, or see if he's kind of done any publication anywhere. But
do you do your own handicapping or for these, or are you really more looking for tips from people you trust?
No, I do my own. One of the things that's cool about it is there's a couple of things. One is that there's usually time form figures. I know there has been in the past, and I don't want to speak out of turn and think that they don't have them anymore. But at one point there was.
Yeah, I think there have to.
So there's time form figures, time form US figures. So that's helpful. And then on YouTube, I'm almost positive that every one of their races is like on YouTube. You can find it. So, and it's an HD, and Terry Spargo's like one of my favorite race callers ever. So just, wake up early and grab some bacon and eggs and a mimosa and listen to him and handicap those races. So I think I'm going to be in Chicago for the Hawthorne tournament. And we're planning a little breakfast party ourselves at Hawthorne to go watch the races and enjoy it. And I think NBC Sports is doing the World Cup. So a little HD coverage with Nick Luck and those guys. So I'm not 100% positive. I'm pretty sure.
That sounds fantastic. Did you get our friend of the podcast, Hawthorne Contest Ambassador Eric Bialik on the case of making and bringing the mimosas for Saturday morning?
Ambassador. It's the Eric Bialik spring meet at Hawthorne is what it is. So
he got the whole meet named after him now.
Yeah, that's his time to shine. He's so funny. He sends us all like Hawthorne picks every day, and so in case we weren't paying attention. So no, he's those guys are great there. John Walsh and the guys at Hawthorne do a really good job. It's an older facility, but you can tell they care about racing and they care about the player. And so I'm sure we'll figure something out. We might have to do some carry out for breakfast, but we'll get it on the TVs and enjoy those big races.
I'm glancing over the international anti-post betting odds for the World Cup right now. Arrogant 2-5. Mike Hogan, buy or sell?
I don't know. I think Jonathan's more comfortable betting 2 to 5 shots than I am. It's probably more, I don't think he's necessarily vulnerable. It's probably more just watch.
Yeah, I hear that. JK, 2 to 5 Arrogant.
Pick 3, single him in the last leg, boom. Hey, actually, I was going to ask you, and I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I'm sure you can get to it. The Godolphin Mile. There's a horse in there that I can't wait to bet. I have a feeling he might be 2 to 5 too, but Sharp Ass Tekka, they have a anti-post number for him yet?
9 to 4 available right now. Sort of a second choice to a horse called North America. So we'll take a look at the PPs. Maybe we'll hopefully, especially if we get Marcus in the mix, we'll talk about some of these races on Friday's show and be able to share our thoughts and hopefully give folks some stuff to pay attention to Saturday morning. I do enjoy when you can do the triple header where you have something from England or Ireland or Dubai in the morning, and then the East Coast tracks in the afternoon, and then you keep it rocking and rolling with Santa Anita in the evening. It can make for a fun 12-hour day of punting on a Saturday when it all lines up right. And Saturday is definitely one of those days, so that should be very cool. And unless either of you guys has more to say about Dubai, we will put a pin in it until Friday.
Well, let me just ask you didn't finish after 2 to 5. Where do the odds go next? Gun Runner, I'm assuming, is the second choice.
Oh, let me scroll back up, and I will tell you. We have Mubtahij is at 9 to 1 right now. Gun Runner at 10 to 1.
Wow,
so, similar.
Yeah, I would personally. I guess I look at the value being playing out Mubtahij as the second choice in the tries and the supers.
Well, though, keep in mind these are win only odds.
Sure.
So we'll have to check. That value might not be nearly that much when it comes to race time, but we'll take a look. We'll I assume you said DRF Bets is taking wagers on it. We'll have a chance to look at all those pools and come up with some clever angles. You had one more thing too, JK?
Did Mubtahij win the their prep, the one that Frosted won last year? Does anyone know the answer to that question?
He did not. I don't think so. In fact, I think Mike DeCock came out and said he was going to be a little short in the race. I think he ended up running that way. He ended up running second, perhaps. I don't have the PPs in front of me, but it was one of those. It's a rarity when the trainer comes out and says, I don't expect him to win. He's going to need a race.
I think the horse's name was look, I'm going to struggle. Etijah. Etijah. I think that horse won the Curlin Handicap. I didn't know they renamed it the Curlin Handicap. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Well, we'll take a look. We'll go down into depth on this. We got a couple more minutes on today's show. We were a little light on questions today. If folks want us to answer questions, you can always hit us up on Twitter or email us at podcast@drf.com. I think last night I may have created a couple of new listeners to the show. I was invited by the legendary bartender / mixologist, whatever you want to call him, Dale DeGroff, who you had the chance to meet, Mike. We went to his picnic at Belmont right before the Breeders' Cup. And Dale was doing this really cool piece. It was sort of wasn't open to the public. It was sort of a private run-through of a show he's putting together about whiskey and horse racing, complete, of course, with a plethora of cocktails. And he was kind enough to invite me and ask me to get up and just give a few remarks about the Triple Crown and historically, and a very little glimpse ahead into this year's event. And several people were asking about the podcast, so hopefully we've got some new folks listening, and hopefully that show will get some traction, and the next one folks will be able to attend. I'll make sure to give information about that. The biggest laugh of the night I got when I posted a picture. We sort of went through the Triple Crown winners. We talked about how post 1978, there was a time there where it seemed like there was never going to be another Triple Crown winner again. I said one idiot even suggested in the New York Times that there was no magic to the 5 weeks and they should consider expanding the duration of the Triple Crown. Oh, wait, that idiot was me. And then we went to showing the picture of me in my Seattle Slew T-shirt meeting the Pharaoh, but then also a shot of Pharaoh at Ashford Stud with Mr. Kinchen and I in the frame, to which I recalled when we posted that picture on Facebook eventually, someone saying, "Great picture of American Pharaoh. What are those two knuckleheads doing in the middle of it?" So it was a good chance. Jonathan, you were represented at the whiskey and horse racing event.
I'm curious. This is not really a podcast question, but where the hell did you find the picture? I know you called me when you were looking for it. I couldn't find it. Where did you?
It was in your Twitter. It was in your Twitter. So
okay.
I don't know what happened to it on your phone. Did you change phones since we were at Keeneland last fall?
No, I don't think so. And I don't really delete pictures. I probably should, but I don't.
I have got it, and I will. Why not? On this occasion, I will retweet the photo of you and I ruining a nice shot of American Pharaoh, and we'll get that taken care of. We got a couple of minutes left, gentlemen. Either of you have any closing thoughts? I have one more little piece of contest stuff I can give, but if there's anything else either of you guys want to get off your chest, we can do that too.
Well, Pete, as you know, this Thursday before our next, our next podcast is going to be Friday, but this Thursday we've got a webinar using formulator notes and charts and replays, and it's going to be a little bit of a reunion of sorts. The old original DRF Players podcast crew will be back for the first time in a while, first time since the Breeders' Cup. Matt Bernier's joining you and me, and that should be a fun one. So everybody sign up for that. We'll have an offer available, of course, later today. I'll be tweeting that out, and you'll see a marquee to sign up on DRF.com. So
notes, charts, and replays. That's the topic.
Notes, charts, and replays. How they can make you better in your handicapping.
Excellent. That'll be very fun to get a chance to work with Matt. Always appreciate that. And he does a tremendous job taking copious notes with Formulator. So he's really a perfect person to have on for that one. Some other stuff. I did confirm the Preakness contest, unless it's incorrect on the DRF tournament site, JK, it is listed as a 2-day, May 20 and 21. So you may want to look into that privately if that affects your plans at all. But I do believe that's going to be a 2-day event. We should also mention that this is, I believe, the final weekend to qualify for the Horse Player World Series, which is going to be happening at the end of the month at the Orleans. Seats are 1,500, and there are some terrific low-cost options for folks to win in on DRF tournaments, tournaments.drf.com. It doesn't seem like you've circled that event on your calendar this year, JK, or am I misreading?
No, I got family obligations. I won't be able to make that one. I have a rotation of working it out where if I were to make the Horse Player World Series, I would miss like 7 things I'm not missing. So I just left it kind of like it was. I didn't want to mess that up. But I do encourage everyone else to get out to the Horse Player World Series, also known as the Matisse family reunion. So if you see a bunch of guys in shirts, I know they don't wear shirts, but they should.
You should get that done for them. You know, you could make up something like as cheesy as possible and send it all to them and see if you can get them to wear it.
Well, I don't even have to send it. I can order them there, and I can know just the person to go pick them up for me.
I like it. I think I know exactly who you mean. We've got we got the Horseplayer World Series. That'll be fun to cover. See who does well in that. Eric Wing, you mentioned it before, JK. He actually won a seat as the MC at the NHC, not eligible to play in that event. So here's another chance for him to go, and this time as a participant, be in a big Vegas contest with a 7-figure prize pool. So if 3 days of sitting around with other horse players, playing horses with a chance to win your share of a 7-figure prize pool sounds like a good way to spend 3 days to you, definitely get involved. Tournaments.drf.com, and you can check out a full list of all the offerings. We are just about out of time, gentlemen. Any other last things, or should we just send it home?
Nothing from me.
I like it. All right, boys. We will be back on Friday, hopefully with special guest Marcus Hirsch. I want to thank Jonathon Kinchen. I want to thank Mike Hogan. I want to thank all of you for listening to show number 222, the March 21st edition of the DRF Players Podcast. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.